My name is Maya Sterling, and despite everything I've achieved, I was never good enough for my family. But that night, everything changed. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to walk away from someone who refused to see your worth. I should probably start by telling you about my family. From the outside, we looked perfect. My father, David Sterling, was a successful real estate mogul in Burlington, Vermont. Not exactly the first place you'd think of for high-stakes property development, but Dad had turned our small city into his personal empire. Luxury condos overlooking Lake Champlain, boutique hotels in the historic district, shopping centers that drew people from Montreal. My mother, Patricia, was the perfect politician's wife before she became the perfect businessman's wife. Always impeccably dressed, always saying the right things, always maintaining appearances. My younger brother, Jake, was the golden boy. Handsome, charming, and completely content to coast on Dad's success while working a comfortable middle management position at Sterling Development. Then there was me. I was the overachiever, the one who actually earned everything she had, while Jake was partying through college. I was graduating summa cum laude from Harvard Law while he was learning the family business from the ground up, meaning Dad handed him everything. I was building my own career at Blackstone Ridge Partners, one of the most prestigious investment firms in New England. But here's the thing about being the successful daughter in a traditional family. Your achievements are never quite enough to earn the same respect as your brother's mediocrity. It was a Tuesday evening in October when Dad called me into his home office. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, and I remember thinking how beautiful Burlington looked from his penthouse. "Maya, sit down," he said, not looking up from his papers. "We need to talk about Thanksgiving." I settled into the leather chair across from his massive mahogany desk. "What about it?" "Your mother's planning something special this year. A big family gathering, extended family, business associates, some city council members." He finally looked up, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. "It's important that we present the right image." "Of course, Dad. What do you need me to do?" "Just be yourself, but the family version of yourself you understand." I didn't understand, but I nodded anyway. This was always how conversations with my father went. Half-spoken expectations and unspoken rules. I was somehow supposed to intuit. "Oh, and Maya." He was already looking back down at his papers. "Jake's bringing someone special. We're going to be making an announcement." My stomach dropped. "What kind of announcement?" "He's proposed to Melissa. They'll be announcing their engagement at dinner. Melissa Crawford, the daughter of Burlington's former mayor, sweet, pretty, and utterly conventional. Everything I wasn't." "That's wonderful, Dad. I'm happy for Jake." "Good. And Maya?" "This is Jake's moment. Let's make sure it stays that way." The dismissal was clear. I left his office with a familiar tight feeling in my chest, the same one I carried since childhood whenever I realized I was being managed rather than included. 3 weeks later, I was standing in Tiffany & Co. in Boston, trying to find the perfect engagement gift for my brother and his fiancée. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was shopping for a celebration I'd learned about as an afterthought. "Can I help?" "You find something?" asked the sales associate, a polished woman in her 50s. "I need an engagement gift. Something extraordinary." She showed me several options: crystal vases, silver picture frames, elegant jewelry boxes. Nothing felt right. Then she mentioned something that made me pause. "We have a very special item that just came in. It's a vintage Tiffany sterling silver tea service, circa 1925. It belonged to the Vanderbilt family. The price is substantial, but it's truly one of a kind." She led me to a private viewing room where the tea service was displayed. It was breathtaking, ornate but elegant, with intricate engravings and a provenance that spoke of old money and American aristocracy, the kind of thing my parents would absolutely adore. "How much?" $35,000. I didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." As I arranged for the engraving, "To Jake and Melissa, with all my love and best wishes for your future together, Maya." I felt something I rarely experienced when it came to my family. Excitement. This gift would show them that I could play at their level. that my success translated into the kind of gesture they valued. Thanksgiving Day arrived with the kind of crisp November weather that makes Vermont look like a postcard. I drove my Tesla Model S up the winding driveway to my parents' estate, the Tiffany box secured in a custom shipping container in my trunk. The house was already full when I arrived. I recognized several faces from Burlington's social scene, the Hartmans who owned the largest hotel chain in the state, the Bishops, who ran the most successful law firm, City Councilman Rodriguez and his wife. This wasn't just a family dinner. It was a political event. Mom air-kissed me at the door, her smile bright but her eyes scanning behind me. "Maya, darling, you look lovely. Where's your guest?" "I didn't bring anyone, Mom. I thought this was about family." "Well, yes, but..." She glanced around nervously. "Your father seated you at the side table with the cousins. I hope that's all right." "The side table at my own family's Thanksgiving dinner?" I felt my professional composure kick in, the same emotional armor I wore in board meetings and negotiations. Of course, whatever works best. Jake appeared then, looking handsome in his navy blazer, with Melissa practically glowing beside him. She was wearing what I recognized as a Carolina Herrera dress, and enough diamonds to finance a small country's GDP. "Maya!" Jake hugged me warmly. "I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be such a special night. I can't wait to hear your announcement." I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I did love my brother. "Wait until you see what we have planned," Melissa added, her voice bright with excitement. "Your parents have been so generous with the arrangements." Dinner was called, and I found myself directed to what Mom had diplomatically called the side table, but which was clearly the kids' table. Despite the fact that I was 31 years old and the youngest person at the main table was my 29-year-old brother, I was seated between my 16-year-old cousin Dylan and my 23-year-old cousin Sophia, both of whom looked as uncomfortable as I felt. The main table, meanwhile, showcased Burlington's elite, with Jake and Melissa holding court at the center. "This is weird, right?" Dylan whispered to me as we watched the adults raise their glasses in what appeared to be a preliminary toast. "Very weird," I agreed, trying to keep my voice light. From my vantage point, I could see Dad commanding the table's attention, his voice carrying across the room as he talked about family legacy and the next generation. Mom was in her element, playing the perfect hostess, making sure everyone's wine glass stayed full and the conversation flowed smoothly. I watched as the main course was served, clearly a different menu than what we were getting at the kids' table. They were having prime rib and lobster tail. We were having turkey and mashed potatoes. The symbolism was not lost on me. "At least the company's good," Sophia murmured, rolling her eyes toward the main table where one of Dad's business partners was holding forth about property taxes. I was about to respond when Dad stood up. Tapping his wine glass with a knife, the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, thank you all for being here tonight. Patricia and I are so grateful to have you in our home for this special celebration." My heart rate picked up. This was it, Jake's moment. "As you know, family is everything to us. The Chun family has been blessed with success, but more importantly, we've been blessed with each other. Tonight, we are here to celebrate the newest chapter in our family story." He gestured to Jake, who stood up with a grin, pulling Melissa up beside him. 3 weeks ago, my son Jake proposed to this beautiful young woman, and she said yes. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me congratulating Jake and Melissa on their engagement. The room erupted in applause and cheers. I clapped along with everyone else, genuinely happy for them despite the strange circumstances of my seating arrangement, but Dad wasn't finished. "Now I know some of you might be wondering why we're making such a big production of this announcement." He paused, his politician's timing perfect. "Well, it's because we have another announcement to make." I felt a chill run down my spine. As you know, I've been considering stepping back from some of my business responsibilities. I'm getting older and I want to spend more time with my family. So tonight, I'm pleased to announce that Jake will be taking over as CEO of Sterling Development, effective January 1st. The room burst into applause again. But this time I couldn't bring myself to clap. I sat frozen, watching my brother accept congratulations for inheriting what I had assumed would be, at minimum, a conversation involving both children, and that's not all, Dad continued, clearly enjoying his moment in the spotlight. Jake and Melissa have also agreed to take over this house after their wedding. Patricia and I are going to be building a smaller place up in Stowe, and we want the main estate to stay in the family. I felt like I was underwater, watching this. Seeing play out from a great distance, the house I'd grown up in, the company I'd assumed I'd at least be considered for, the family legacy I'd worked my entire life to be worthy of, all of it handed to Jake as a wedding gift. Now I know what you're thinking, Dad said, and for a moment I thought he was going to acknowledge me, to explain why his daughter who'd actually earned her success, wasn't part of this plan. You're thinking, David, what about Maya? Every head in the room turned to look at me. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my expression neutral. Maya has done incredibly well for herself. Harvard Law, a prestigious job in Boston. She's made her own way in the world, and we couldn't be prouder. But Jake understands the family business. He understands what it means to carry on the Chen name. The subtext was clear. I was successful, but I wasn't family in the way that mattered. So please, everyone, raise your glasses. To Jake and Melissa, to new beginnings, and to the future of the Sterling family. As everyone stood and raised their glasses, I remained seated at the kids' table, watching my inheritance and my place in the family hierarchy evaporate in real time. After dinner, as people mingled in the living room with coffee and cognac, I retrieved the Tiffany box from my car. Despite everything that had just happened, I was still determined to give Jake and Melissa their gift. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was stubbornness, but I wasn't going to let my father's announcement change my plans. I found Jake by the fireplace, surrounded by well-wishers. When he saw me approaching with the distinctive blue box, his face lit up. Maya. You didn't have to. Of course I did. You're my brother. I handed him the box. And the conversations around us quieted as people noticed the size and obvious expense of the gift. Jake opened it carefully, and I watched his face change as he saw the tea service. Maya, this is incredible. Melissa, look at this. Melissa gasped as she saw the sterling silver pieces nestled in their custom foam. Maya, this must have cost a fortune. Are you sure? I'm sure it's a Vanderbilt family piece circa 1925. I thought it would be perfect for when you start entertaining in the new house. I said the last part without bitterness, but I saw Dad's head turn at the mention of the expense. Jake, let me see that, Dad said, moving closer to examine the gift. He picked up the teapot, turning it over to check the hallmarks. I watched his face as he did the mental math. The weight of the silver, the quality of the craftsmanship, the provenance. I'd mentioned, Maya, he said slowly. How much did you spend on this? Does it matter? It's a gift. It matters to me. How much? I could feel the room's attention focusing on us. This wasn't how I'd imagined this moment going. $35,000, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. $35,000. Dad repeated, his voice carrying across the room. Maya, that's excessive. It's inappropriate. Inappropriate? You're trying to upstage your brother on his engagement night? This isn't about generosity, it's about showing off. I felt like I'd been slapped. Dad, I would never. Wouldn't you? You set the teapot down with more force than necessary. This is exactly the kind of thing you do, Maya. You can't just be happy for someone else. You have to make it about you and your success and your money. The room was completely silent now. I could see the other guests looking uncomfortable, but none of them were leaving. This was the kind of family drama that people would talk about for months. I think, Dad continued, that Jake and Melissa should return this gift. It's not appropriate for the occasion. Dad, no. Jake started to protest, but Dad held up his hand. The decision is made. Maya, you can take this back to wherever you bought it. Use the money for something more suitable. I stood there, holding the empty Tiffany box, feeling the weight of $35,000 worth of rejection. But more than that, I felt the weight of 31 years of never being quite enough, never being quite right, never being quite what my family wanted me to be. You know what? I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. You're absolutely right, Dad. This gift is inappropriate. I walked over to Jake, who was looking mortified, and began placing the tea service back in the box. Maya, you don't have to, he started. No, Dad's right. This isn't suitable. I closed the box and tucked it under my arm. Excuse me, everyone, I need to step outside for a moment. I walked out to the garden, my heels clicking on the stone path, and pulled out my phone. The November air was sharp, but I barely felt it. Through my anger, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. David Morrison. Burlington's current mayor, David and I had met several times through my work at Blackstone Ridge. The city had been looking for private investment partners for a major downtown revitalization project, and my firm had been courting the contract for months. David was a practical man, a former businessman himself, and we developed a good working relationship. He answered on the third ring. Maya? This is unexpected. How are you? I'm well, David. I hope I'm not interrupting your Thanksgiving. Not at all. My family's in the living room watching football, and I'm hiding in my office pretending to work. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I wanted to give you a heads up about something. I've been thinking about your downtown project. Oh, I'm prepared to make Blackstone Ridge's commitment official, $50 million, with the potential for additional investment depending on the project's success. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Maya, that's incredible news. But why are you calling me about this on Thanksgiving? Because I want to make the announcement tonight. I'm at my parents' house, and there are several city council members here. I thought it might be appropriate to share the news with them directly. Tonight? Maya, that's very generous, but are you sure about the timing? I'm sure. In fact, I'd like you to be the one to make the announcement. Could you come by my parents' house? I'll text you the address. Yes, of course, give me 20 minutes. I hung up and walked back toward the house. Through the large windows, I could see the party continuing, my family and their guests celebrating Jake's engagement, and his inheritance, completely unaware of what was about to happen. 20 minutes later, I was standing in the foyer when the doorbell rang. Mom looked puzzled as she moved to answer it. Maya, are you expecting someone? Actually, yes, I am. She opened the door to reveal Mayor Morrison, looking slightly out of breath but smiling warmly. Mrs. Chun, thank you for having me. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Mom said, though her confusion was evident. Please, come in. I stepped forward. David, thank you for coming, everyone. I'd like you to meet Mayor Morrison. The room buzzed with interest. Having the sitting mayor show up at your dinner party was the kind of social coup that my parents lived for. Dad approached with his best political smile. Mr. Mayor, what an honor. I'm David Chun. We've met before. Of course, Mr. Chun. Thank you for having me in your beautiful home. What brings you by tonight? Dad asked, clearly trying to figure out how to take credit for this unexpected visit. Mayor Morrison looked at me. Actually, I'm here because of Maya. She's asked me to share some news with your guests. I could see Dad's confusion deepening. Maya? That's right, I said, stepping forward. I have an announcement to make. The room gradually quieted as people sensed something significant was happening. As you know, I work for Blackstone Ridge Partners. What you might not know is that we've been working with the city on a major downtown revitalization project. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that Blackstone Ridge has committed $50 million to that project. There was a murmur of surprise and interest from the crowd. But more than that, I continued, I'm announcing that I've been appointed as the lead project manager for the investment. I'll be relocating back to Burlington to oversee the development personally. The murmur grew louder. This was big news, the kind of development that would transform Burlington's downtown and create hundreds of jobs. Mayor Morrison stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't overstate how significant this is for our city. This investment will revitalize our downtown, create jobs, and establish Burlington as a major economic center for northern Vermont. Maya Sterling is one of the most respected development specialists in New England, and we're incredibly fortunate to have her leading this project. I watched my father's face as the implications sank in. I wasn't just successful, I was about to become one of the most powerful people in Burlington's business community. Now, I know this is a family gathering, Mayor Morrison continued, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to thank Maya publicly for her commitment to our city. Maya, would you like to say a few words? I looked around the room at all the faces staring at me. My parents, Jake and Melissa, the city council members, all the business leaders and socialites who'd been treating me like an afterthought just an hour ago. Thank you, David. I'm excited about this opportunity to give back to the community that shaped me. Burlington has always been home, and I'm looking forward to being part of its future. The room erupted in applause. I could see people recalculating their assumptions about me, about my place in the local hierarchy, about the respect I was due, but I wasn't finished. I do want to thank my family, I continued, for teaching me the importance of making my own way in the world. As my father said earlier, I've had to build my own success, create my own opportunities. Tonight's announcement is proof that sometimes the best investments are the ones you make in yourself. After Mayor Morrison left and the congratulations died down, I found myself surrounded by people who'd barely acknowledged me earlier in the evening. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me, to congratulate me, to make sure I knew how proud they were of my success. Dad approached me as I was talking to Councilman Rodriguez about the project timeline. Maya, could I speak with you privately? I excused myself and followed him to his office. That was quite an announcement, he said, closing the door behind us. Thank you. I have to ask, how long have you been planning this? The project? We've been working on it for months. The decision to relocate and take the lead role? I made that tonight. Maya, that's a huge career decision. Are you sure you've thought this through? I sat down in the chair across from his desk, the same one where I'd learned about Jake's engagement 3 weeks ago. I've thought about it, Dad. I've thought about a lot of things tonight, such as what it means to be part of a family, such as what it means to earn respect versus inherit it, such as what it means to be valued for who you are rather than dismissed for who you're not. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Maya, if this is about the seating arrangement, it's not about the seating arrangement. Dad, it's about everything the seating arrangement represents. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of Burlington below. Do you know what I realized? Tonight, I've been trying my whole life to earn something that was never going to be given to me. I've been trying to prove that I'm worthy of respect, worthy of inclusion, worthy of being seen as an equal member of this family. Maya, you are... No, Dad, I'm not. Tonight made that very clear. Jake gets the business. Jake gets the house. Jake gets the celebration. Maya gets the kids' table and the lecture about inappropriate gifts. That's not. It's exactly what it is. I turned back to face him. But here's the thing. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your validation. I don't need your respect. Because I've built something bigger than what you could. Ever give me. Dad was quiet for a long moment. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm done trying to fit into your vision of what I should be. I'm taking control of my own narrative. Maya, you're being dramatic. This is your family. Is it? Because families support each other. Families celebrate each other's successes. Families don't humiliate each other in front of guests. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Dad? About that inappropriate gift? I'm keeping it. It'll look perfect in my new penthouse office downtown. I walked back into the living room, where the party was still in full swing. People were still talking about the mayor's visit, about the downtown project, about my new role in the city's development. I found Jake and Melissa by the fireplace, looking slightly overwhelmed by the evening's events. Jake, could I talk to you for a minute? Of course. He followed me to a quieter corner of the room. I want you to know that I'm genuinely happy for you, The engagement, the business, all of it. You deserve it. Maya, about earlier, don't worry about it. Dad was right. The gift was inappropriate, but not for the reason he thinks. What do you mean? I mean, it was inappropriate because it was based on the assumption that we're the kind of family who gives each other extravagant gifts to show love. We're not. We're the kind of family who uses gifts as weapons and love as currency. Jake looked uncomfortable. Maya, that's not. It's okay, Jake. I'm not angry at you. You played your role perfectly. You've been the son Dad wanted, the heir he needed. I'm just sorry it took me so long to realize that there wasn't a role for me to play. There is a role for you. You're my sister. I know, and I'll always be your sister, but I won't be Dad's daughter, not the way he wants me to be. I hugged Jake, genuinely, warmly. Congratulations on your engagement. I hope you and Melissa are very happy. Then I walked over to where my parents were holding court. With some of the other guests, Mom, Dad, I'm going to head out. Already? Mom looked surprised. But people are still talking about your announcement. I know, but I have an early morning tomorrow. I need to start looking for office space. I kissed Mom on the cheek, shook Dad's hand like we were business associates, and headed for the door. Maya? Dad called after me. We should talk about this project. There might be opportunities for Chun development to be involved. I paused at the door and turned back to him. Dad, I appreciate the thought, but this project is about bringing new energy to Burlington, fresh perspectives, innovative approaches. I'm not sure Chun development is the right fit. I could see him processing the rejection, the realization that I wasn't going to be bringing him into my success the way he'd never brought me into his. Drive safely, dear, Mom said, her voice tight with confusion and concern. I will. Thank you for dinner. And with that, I walked out of my childhood. Home, carrying my $35,000 tea service and my newfound freedom. 6 months later, I was standing in my corner office on the top floor of Burlington's newest high-rise, looking out over the downtown construction site that was transforming the city's skyline. The Vanderbilt tea service sat on a credenza behind my desk, gleaming. In the afternoon sunlight, not as a gift for someone else, but as a reminder of the night I decided to stop seeking approval and start commanding respect. My assistant knocked on the door. Maya? Your 4 o'clock is here. Send them in. The door opened to reveal a delegation from the Burlington Chamber of Commerce, led by Patricia Morrison, the mayor's wife and the chamber's current president. Maya, thank you for meeting with us, Patricia said, settling into one of the chairs across from my desk. We wanted to discuss your keynote speech for the annual Business Awards dinner. Of course, I'm honored to be speaking. We also wanted to discuss the possibility of you accepting this year's Business Leader of the Year award. I smiled. That's very kind, but I think there are others who... Actually, there aren't, Maya. What you've accomplished in 6 months is unprecedented. The downtown project is ahead of schedule and under budget. You've created over 400 jobs. You've brought national attention to Burlington's business community. You've earned this recognition. As we discussed the details of the awards ceremony, I thought about how much had changed since that Thanksgiving dinner. I kept my word about relocating to Burlington, but I also kept my distance from my family. We were cordial when we ran into each other, but I no longer sought their approval or included them in my plans. Jake and Alyssa had gotten married in a lavish ceremony at the country club. I'd sent a beautiful gift, a crystal vase from Waterford, appropriate and unremarkable, but I'd been traveling for work and unable to attend. The message was clear. I wished them well, but I was no longer available to be managed or marginalized. Dad had reached out several times, trying to position Sterling Development as a subcontractor for various aspects of the downtown project. I'd been polite but firm in my refusals. This was my project, my vision, my success. I wasn't about to let him profit from the opportunities he'd never given me. Maya? Patricia's voice brought me back to the present. Are you all right? Yes, sorry, just thinking about how much has changed this year. It's been quite a transformation for you and for the city. After the chamber delegation left, I walked over to the window and looked down at the construction site. In a few months, This would be a thriving mixed-use development offices, retail, residential, and entertainment spaces that would serve as the heart of Burlington's economic renaissance. More importantly, it would serve as proof that sometimes the best revenge is massive success. The night of the awards ceremony, I stood in front of my full-length mirror, adjusting the neckline of my navy Oscar de la Renta gown. The awards were being held at the Hilton Burlington, and I knew my family would be there. Dad is a major donor to the chamber. Mom is a board member. Jake and Melissa as rising stars. In the business community, this would be the first time we'd all been in the same room since Thanksgiving. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. "Car is waiting downstairs. Break a leg tonight." I grabbed my clutch and headed downstairs to the waiting sedan. As we drove through downtown Burlington, I could see the progress we'd made. New streetlights, freshly paved roads, buildings under construction that would house the offices, and shops that were already transforming the city's economy. The Hilton was buzzing with activity when I arrived. The chamber had clearly pulled out all the stops for this year's ceremony. The ballroom was decorated in elegant black and gold, with round tables draped in white linens and centerpieces of white roses and gold accents. I was seated at the head table, between Mayor Morrison and Patricia Morrison. From my vantage point, I could see my family's table near the front of the room. Dad looked distinguished in his tuxedo. Mom was radiant in champagne-colored silk, and Jake and Melissa looked like the perfect young couple they were. "Maya," Mayor Morrison leaned over to me as the appetizer was served. "I wanted to thank you again for everything you've done for our city. When I think about where we were a year ago, it's been a team effort, David. I couldn't have done it without the support of the city council and the business community." Modest, as always, but we both know that's not true. You've been the driving force behind this transformation. As dinner progressed, I found myself relaxing into the evening. The conversation was stimulating, the food was excellent, and I felt genuinely proud of what we'd accomplished together. Then it came time for the awards presentation. Patricia Morrison took the podium as the lights dimmed and the presentation began. There were awards for small business growth, innovation, community service, and emerging leadership. Jake and Melissa won the award for Young Entrepreneurs of the Year for their work expanding Chen Development's residential portfolio. I applauded genuinely as they accepted their award. Whatever our family dynamics, I was proud of Jake's success. "Now," Patricia said, "we come to our final award of the evening. The Business Leader of the Year award recognizes an individual who has demonstrated exceptional leadership, innovation, and commitment to Burlington's economic development." The room grew quiet as she continued. "This year's recipient has accomplished something truly remarkable. In less than 12 months, she has managed a $50 million investment project, created over 400 jobs, and attracted national attention to Burlington's business community. She has demonstrated that with vision, dedication, and exceptional skill, one person can transform an entire city." I felt my heart rate increase as I realized what was happening. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating this year's Business Leader of the Year, Maya Chen. The room erupted in applause as I stood, my legs slightly shaky, and made my way to the podium. As I walked through the crowd, I caught sight of my family's table. Dad was applauding politely, but his expression was unreadable. Mom looked proud, but surprised. Jake was beaming, clapping enthusiastically. I accepted the Crystal Award from Patricia and stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you so much for this incredible honor. When I decided to relocate to Burlington to take on this project, I knew it would be challenging. What I didn't expect was how rewarding it would be to work with such a dedicated and visionary community." I paused, looking out at the room full of faces, business leaders, city officials, community members who had supported the project from the beginning. This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to everyone who believed in Burlington's potential. Everyone who is willing to take a risk on something new and different. It belongs to the construction workers who showed up every day to build something meaningful. It belongs to the city officials who cut through red tape to make things happen. It belongs to the business owners who committed to being part of this transformation. The applause continued, but I held up my hand to indicate I wasn't finished. I also want to thank my family who taught me the importance of hard work, determination, And making my own way in the world, they showed me that success isn't given. It's earned. And they showed me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is believe in yourself, even when others don't. I looked directly at my parents' table as I said this, seeing understanding dawn in Dad's eyes. This project has been about more than economic development. It's been about proving that Burlington can compete with any city in the region. It's been about showing that innovation and tradition can coexist. And it's been about demonstrating that sometimes the best way to honor your roots is to grow beyond them. The applause was thunderous as I concluded my speech and returned to my seat. As I sat down, Mayor Morrison leaned over to me. "That was beautifully said, Maya. Your parents must be incredibly proud." I looked over at my family's table, where Dad was now standing and applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Our eyes met across the room, and for the first time in years, I saw something that looked like respect after the ceremony. I was surrounded by well-wishers and business contacts wanting to congratulate me and discuss future opportunities. I was in the middle of a conversation with a developer from Montreal when I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Maya?" I turned to find Dad standing behind me, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Dad, thank you for coming tonight. Could we talk? Privately?" I excused myself from the conversation and followed Dad to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the crowd. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "Dad, you don't." "Yes, I do, Maya. I've been thinking about that night at Thanksgiving, about everything that happened, about everything I said." He paused, running his hand through his hair. "I was wrong, not just about the gift, but about everything." I waited, not sure what to say. "I let my own insecurities about your success cloud my judgment. You achieved something I never could. You built your own empire from nothing, and instead of celebrating that, I felt threatened by it." "Threatened?" "You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like everything I'd built, everything I'd accomplished, was somehow lesser because you'd done it without help." He looked directly at me. "That was my failure, not yours. Dad, let me finish tonight. Watching you accept that award, hearing you speak about making your own way, I finally understood what I'd been too proud to see. You didn't need my approval or my business or my inheritance. You were already beyond all of that." I felt tears threatening, but I held them back. "I'm proud of you." "Maya, I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of the woman you've become, the success you've built, the leader you are. You didn't just exceed my expectations, you exceeded my ability to even have expectations." "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more to me than you know. I also want you to know that I understand why you've kept your distance. I understand why you haven't included Chun development in your projects. I earned that exclusion." "Dad, it wasn't about punishment, wasn't it? At least partly." He smiled sadly. "Maya, you gave me exactly what I gave you. Polite distance and professional courtesy. The difference is, you earned the right to do that." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding settling between us. "I don't expect things to go back to the way they were," Dad continued. "I don't expect you to forget what happened or pretend it didn't matter. But I hope that maybe someday we can build something new. Something based on who we actually are rather than who we thought we should be." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. "Your mother would like to talk to you too. When you're ready, she's been worried about you." "About us? She knows she played a role in this too." I nodded. "I'll call her tomorrow." "Good." He paused. "Jake's been asking about you. He misses his sister. I miss him too, all of you. Actually, well, maybe we can work on that slowly." As Dad walked away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope, not hope for things to go back to the way they were, but hope for something better. Something built on mutual respect rather than inherited obligation. 3 months later, I was standing in the same spot where I'd stood that Thanksgiving night. But everything was different. The garden party was my idea this time, a celebration of the downtown, project's completion, and the official opening of Burlington's new business district. The guest list was my choice. City officials, business partners, project team members, and Yes, my family, but this time there was no main table and kids' table. There were no seating charts or hierarchies. There was just good food, good wine, and good conversation among equals. I watched Jake and Melissa moving through the crowd. Clearly in their element, Jake had proven himself as CEO of Chen Development, and Melissa had started her own interior design firm. They were genuinely happy, and their success felt earned rather than inherited. Mom approached me as I stood by the garden's edge, looking out over the lights of downtown Burlington. Maya, this is wonderful. You should be very proud. Thank you. Mom, I am. I want you to know that I'm sorry too. About everything, I got so caught up in managing appearances that I forgot to actually see you. Mom, we don't need to. Yes, we do. You're my daughter, and I failed you. I let you believe that your achievements didn't matter as much as your brothers, simply because they were different. That was inexcusable. I turned to face her, saying, tears in her eyes. I've been watching you tonight, seeing how people respond to you, how they respect you. You command a room in a way I never could. You've built something that matters, something that will outlast all of us. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. We hugged then, really hugged for the first time in years. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. As the evening wound down, I found myself in Dad's study, the same room where I'd learned about Jake's engagement, where I told Dad I was done seeking his approval, but this time I was there by choice, showing him the architectural plans for the project's second phase. This is impressive work, Maya. The scope is incredible. Thank you. I'm hoping to break ground next spring. Have you given any thought to local contractors? I looked up from the plans. Are you asking for Sterling Development? I'm asking as your father who happens to run a construction company. If you think we're qualified, I'd be honored to submit a bid. If not, I understand. I smiled. Submit a bid, Dad. It'll be evaluated on its merits, just like everyone else's. That's all I can ask for. Actually, it's more than you asked for before. Before, you expected it to be given to you. He laughed. Touché, you're right. I'm learning to earn things instead of expecting them. It's a good lesson for all of us. As I prepared to leave, Dad walked me to the door. Maya, I want you to know that I'm proud of who you've become. Not just your success, but your character. You could have destroyed me professionally after what happened at Thanksgiving. You had the power to do it and probably the justification, but you didn't. You took the high road. I took the successful road. There's a difference. Is there? I think they might be the same thing. 1 year later, I was standing at the podium of the Burlington Convention Center, a building that hadn't existed before our downtown revitalization project, addressing the New England Economic Development Conference. The audience was filled with mayors, city planners, developers, and business leaders from across the region, all wanting to understand how a mid-sized Vermont city had become a model for urban renewal. The key to Burlington's success, I said. Looking out at the crowd, wasn't just the financial investment, though that was certainly important. It was the recognition that economic development isn't just about buildings and infrastructure, it's about people. It's about creating opportunities for everyone to contribute their talents and achieve their potential. After my presentation, I was approached by a young woman who looked to be in her early 20s. Ms. Chun, I'm Sarah Martinez. I'm a senior at UVM studying urban planning. I wanted to thank you for your presentation and for everything you've done for Burlington. Thank you, Sarah. What's your focus within urban planning? Sustainable development with a focus on social equity. I'm actually writing my thesis on the Burlington project and its impact on economic mobility. That's fascinating. What have you found? Well, one of the most interesting aspects is how the project created pathways for advancement that hadn't existed before. The construction jobs led to permanent positions in building maintenance and management. The retail spaces prioritized local entrepreneurs. The office spaces attracted companies that hired locally. I smiled. That was very much by design. I know, and it worked. But more than that, it created a model that other cities are trying to replicate. You've essentially created a blueprint for inclusive economic development. I hope so. That was always the goal. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. I've read about your background, your family's business. It must have been difficult to strike out on your own, especially in a place where your family was already established. I considered her question carefully. It was challenging, but it was also necessary. Sometimes you have to step outside of existing systems to create something new. Sometimes you have to be willing to risk failure to achieve something meaningful. Do you ever regret it? The conflict with your family, I mean. No, I said without hesitation. The conflict was temporary. The respect I earned was permanent, and ultimately, that conflict led better relationship with my family. One based on mutual respect rather than inherited obligation. After Sarah left, I walked outside to the convention center's plaza, where a small crowd had gathered around the fountain at the center of the space. It was a beautiful spring evening, and families were out enjoying the warm weather. I pulled out my phone and called Jake. Maya, how did the conference go? Really well. How are things with you? Good, busy. We just finished the residential phase of the Riverside development. 32 units, all sold before we finished construction. That's fantastic. You've really built something special with the company. Thanks. I learned from the best. I learned from watching you. Jake, I'm serious, Maya, what you did. Building your own success from nothing, it inspired me to take Sterling Development in new directions. I'm not just maintaining what Dad built anymore. I'm building something new. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too. We all are. After we hung up, I sat on one of the benches overlooking the plaza and reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 3 years ago, I'd been sitting at the kids' table, feeling invisible and unappreciated. Tonight, I was recognized as one of the leading urban development specialists in New England. But more than that, I'd learned something important about revenge. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. It's building something so successful, so meaningful, that it redefines the terms of every relationship in your life. 2 years later, I was standing in the ballroom of the Shelburne Museum, holding a glass of champagne and looking out at the crowd gathered for Jake and Melissa's second wedding anniversary party. It was a smaller, more intimate gathering than their original reception. Family and close friends celebrating not just their anniversary, but the life they'd built together. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake said, tapping his glass to get everyone's attention. Melissa, and I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. 2 years ago, we promised to love and support each other, and we've been lucky enough to have all of you supporting us along the way. He paused, looking around the room until his eyes found mine, but there's someone here tonight who I want to thank especially. My sister Maya has shown our family what it means to believe in yourself, to build something meaningful, and to never give up on your dreams. Maya, you've been an inspiration to all of us, and we're grateful to have you back in our lives. The room turned to look at me, and I felt the familiar warmth of genuine appreciation, so different from the polite applause I'd received at family gatherings in the past. Maya, Jake continued, would you like to say something? I stood up, glass in hand, and looked around the room at the faces of people who'd become not just family, but friends. Thank you, Jake. 2 years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought it was about proving yourself to other people, about forcing them to recognize your worth. But I've learned that real success is about creating something meaningful, something that makes the world a little better than it was before. I raised my glass to Jake and Melissa for building a marriage based on love and respect, to all of you for supporting not just them, but all of us as we've grown and changed, and to the power of starting over, of building something new, and of never settling for being underestimated. Cheers. The room responded, and I felt the satisfaction of a toast well given and a life well lived. As the party continued around me, I stepped out onto the terrace overlooking Lake Champlain. The water was calm, reflecting the lights of Burlington. In the distance, I could see the skyline I'd helped create, the buildings that housed the businesses and families that were thriving because of the risks we'd taken and the vision we'd pursued. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. The Hartford project proposal is ready for your review. They're offering to make you lead developer for their downtown revitalization. Are you interested? I smiled as I typed back, schedule a meeting. Let's see if we can work some magic in Connecticut too. Because that's what I've learned in the end. The best revenge isn't just succeeding once, it's succeeding so consistently, so thoroughly, that success becomes your reputation rather than your exception. I took one last look at the lights of Burlington, raised my glass in a private toast to the woman who'd sat at the kids' table 3 years ago, and walked back inside to rejoin my family. Have you ever had to choose between peace and family? Sometimes the most powerful revenge is walking away. If my story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Revenge, and share your truth in the comments. Because sometimes justice whispers and still echoes forever.